Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I have bought or received in 2022 so far. I have acquired quite a few books in the last little bit. So my last haul was in December or maybe early January. I thought I had a sufficient pile to finally do this, especially because my 21st birthday was a couple of days ago. I haven't met up with my family yet, so there's a chance that there will be another book or two added to this, but here are the books. First off, I'm going to start with the books that I don't have physically because I actually have gotten quite a few of those, enough to mention. Firstly, I am signed up for Tor's ebook of the month club, which is entirely free, by the way. I think you just have to sign up for emails, but I have gotten 2 bundles of 3 books each. One of these groups included A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I have read and loved A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and actually one of my friends just read it and it's now like one of their favorite books of all time. But this is a new novella series from her, and this follows Dex, who is a monk who makes tea, and he meets a robot and they go on a road trip. So I'm expecting some light sci-fi fun times. I don't know, it's like happy or sad, but I expect to really enjoy this and really care about the 2 characters. And also with that book came Unlocked by John Scalzi. This is the prequel to Locked In, which was a book that I have had on my radar for a million years. And the first like adult sci-fi that I was really interested in. Still haven't read it, but I'm still interested in reading it eventually. Lock In is about this sudden disease where like 1/3 of the population is essentially like in a coma for no discernible reason, and it's like trying to figure that out. This book seems to be a different perspective from the original on it. So this seems to be about the people who were working to fight this virus. And lastly, this bundle had An Unnatural Life, and this is about an android that was accused of murder but claims it didn't do it, and it's like androids don't have rights yet, so it's trying to figure out what really happened and like, do the androids deserve rights, sort of thing. I had never heard of this before the bundle, but now I have it on my Kindle. And the other bundle I got, the headlining book, was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. This is a series of novellas which I believe just got like a regular size novel in it. It's about an AI who calls himself Murderbot, and they like just don't care about humans at all. And I've heard that this is really funny, so I think this is going to be a good book for like a readathon, or if I'm about to get into a slump. This is one that I feel like I'm really gonna love. And the other 2 in this bundle I had not heard of. One of them is Witchmark by C.L. Polk. This is about a doctor who has a healing gift that is a witch mark. When one of his patients is murdered, he is found out that he has this witch mark, and now he has to investigate who murdered his patient. Sounds interesting. And then there is Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh, which this synopsis is very vague, but it's about the wild man who lives in the woods, and he watches the woods, and then a new person comes in and everything is shaken up. I know it's gonna be fantastical, but like that does not give me what the tone of the book is. So this one's a wild card for me. On to the audiobooks that I picked up. I have an Audible subscription, and me and my dad share it. Every year that we've had the subscription, we've had a couple extra that are gonna expire in April, so I just get a ton and then listen to those until I run out. So I got 5 books this year. 2 of them I have already listened to at this point, and one of them I am currently listening to and liking, and 2 I have not. The first one that I've listened to is 56 Days. This is by Catherine Ryan Howard, I think. And this is the first book that I had ever heard of that had to do with COVID. 2 20-somethings meet in Dublin and start going out with each other, and that's right as COVID hits Ireland and the rest of the world. So they decide that they want to keep going out, but they're going to have to isolate. They end up moving in together to be in quarantine together. And it turns out 56 days later, there will be a body in the apartment that they have been staying in. This was a really fun and engaging audiobook. I think this is one of those thrillers that like it didn't have enough avenues for it to finally be really surprising at the very end, but I thought like the slow reveals and the pacing and the switching of perspectives, the circling, the drain of it all really made it fun and engaging to listen to. Next up, we have Local Woman Missing, which I have also listened to. This is my first Mary Kubica. She's a really popular thriller author, and I had never given her a chance. This is about a neighborhood where two women and one of their children were kidnapped like 10 years ago. Both of the women turned up, their bodies turned up, and the daughter was never found. This is following one of the women who went missing in the days before her death, the days around the kidnappings, and then 10 years later, the daughter shows up and they are trying to find out what really happened to her and where she was, and etc. Who did the kidnappings slash murders. This book starts out with the perspective of the girl who was kidnapped escaping, and that was so interesting. The rest of the book, not so much. This did have a mixed cast, and all of the performances except for one were great. Next up, the one that I'm currently listening to is The X Talk. This is one of the first rom-coms that I ever officially put on my TBR because I love books with podcasts, and I really wanted to listen to the audiobook of this because it has to do with the podcast. So our main character has worked at a radio station for a while, and she is a producer but has always wanted her own show, and she's just generally not in her life where she wants to be. She's approaching 30 and doesn't have a boyfriend, and her mom's getting married and she's still grieving the loss of her dad, and then this uppity guy who's new to the station suddenly gets a lot of attention, and when they need a new show on slate, they end up having to pretend that they are ex-boyfriend and girlfriend. They are put on a new show that she pitched called The X Talk, where two exes talk about relationships. I'm having a lot of fun with this so far. The first of the ones that I haven't listened to yet is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is a new fantasy series about our main character who is a con artist who is trying to con her way into noble houses so she can get a fortune for her and her sister. It gives me Venetia vibes because it's like, oh, there's masquerades and such. And the last audiobook that I got is Knight's Shadow by Sebastian D. Castell. This is the sequel to Traitor's Blade. I have to get these on audiobook because they are not available from my library, and I tried to get them to order it and they didn't want to. So I also would have listened to the audiobook anyway because I really like the narrator. This series is about this band of knights sworn to the king, where after the king was murdered and their kingdom taken over, they were essentially banished, and they are still trying to uphold the king's law while other things are going on, and they're just trying to do the right thing. It's like Three Musketeers, it's got humor, and it just kind of gave me different vibes than a lot of the traditional fantasy that I've been reading, so I can't wait to get to this one. I'm structuring this so strangely, but this section is going to be the books that I got myself, and the first section of this section is the books that I have already read. The first of those is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. The Eye of the World was the first book that I read this year, and I got my friend to read it because they love the show, and they immediately started reading all of the books. I think they're on book 5 right now, even though they started after me, so I was like, shit, I gotta catch up. So I went out and bought The Great Hunt, and now I am going to read this series probably quicker than I would another series, but still I'm gonna take my time because I want to be able to digest it and have fun with it, and I don't know how to describe it. We've got magical forces, that one of them is the feminine magic and one of them is the masculine magic, but the masculine magic was broken and it corrupts every single person who uses it. The one person who will be able to wield that masculine magic is supposed to be the one who destroys the great force of evil, threatening the universe over and over again, and our main character appears to start having magical abilities. So this is the sequel. I didn't quite like this one as much as I liked the first one. I didn't feel that the stakes were as high as the other one, and I didn't feel as connected to the characters in this one, but I still think I'm really gonna love this series as a whole, especially as it gets more into its own. And then the last book that I finished is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is the sequel to House of Earth and Blood, the second book in the Crescent City series. This is an urban fantasy romance series about our main character, Bryce, is a party girl, and something really tragic happens in her life that entirely gets her off track, and she eventually, a couple years afterwards, when new things are coming to light about that, so she is assigned a bodyguard who is a fallen angel named Han Athalar, and they are trying to figure out what really happened. And this is the next book where we are having our main characters are getting involved in this human rebellion. Just like The Great Hunt didn't feel as grand as The Eye of the World, this one did not feel as grand as its predecessor. I did like this for a lot of the reasons that I've liked a lot of Sarah J. Maas's other books, but I think the focus was shifted away from more what I wanted to see and what was seen in the first book to stuff that I wasn't as much invested in, but I still really liked it and will continue on in this series, of course. So now onto the books that I haven't read, and the first section in this section is my Book of the Month books. I am a subscriber of Book of the Month, and I have gotten 3 books this year, and one of them I have yet to open, so you get to open it with me. The first one I got this year was The Life Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is a rom-com about our main character, Olive. She is a grad student. She ends up kissing one of the young professors, and they end up doing a fake dating thing, and it turns out he's like in love with her. And also, this is Raylo fanfiction that got published, so I cannot wait to read this, because if I hate it, it's gonna be funny, and if I love it, it's gonna be funny, because it's Raylo fanfiction. I have a bunch of rabid Star Wars fans in my life, so I cannot wait to update them on everything about this, whether I love it or not. The next one is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This is about a woman who needs a place to live and decides to move in with her brother, who lives in an apartment in Paris, but when she gets there, he's not there, and she thinks that might have something to do with one of the people who lives in the apartment. This gives me Lock Every Door vibes. Lucy Foley has gotten really good reviews for her previous fillers, and I think this one has too, so I think I am at the very least going to enjoy it, whether I give it a 5-star or not. Actually, you know what? I don't really give thrillers 5 stars a lot of the time, but it's fine. And the next one, obviously I know what this is, but you get to open it with me. Let us see. Da-da-da-da. This is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. Please don't stop. And that is Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. I've had Nina LaCour on my radar for so long, and I finally read We Are Okay last year. The audiobook was fantastic. I gave it a 4.5. It was one of my favorite YA titles of the year, and this is her adult debut. So this is about 2 women who are in complicated parts of their lives. One of them ran away from home as a teenager, and the other one got a job at a flower shop and started an affair with the owner, and they end up meeting and like they collide. I don't know exactly how romantic or platonic their relationship is. I get the vibes that it's a little complicated, but I am very excited for this. I really love Nina LaCour's writing, and her story in We Are Okay really connected with me, so I'm so excited for this. And honestly, did anybody notice how many authors that are YA had an adult debut this year? I almost wanted to do a 3 of Clubs thing on it, but I decided not to. Then on to the books that I bought that I have not read yet. First up, we have To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. This is the author of A Little Life, which I read and adored last year, and this kind of gives me similar vibes to A Little Life. This is an alternate history book that is also told in 3 timelines, where it takes place in New York. There's a story in 1893, there's a story in 1993 that has to do with the AIDS pandemic, and then in 2093 there's like this totalitarian government type deal. So it is just a weaving of these three narratives. And honestly, I heard alternate history, I heard multiple timelines, and it gives me the same sort of heartbreaking vibes as A Little Life. And even though I've heard 0 reviews for this book, I'm sure that I'm really going to enjoy it, despite its density, and probably because of its density, probably. This one, the way that I bought it was fun. When I bought To Paradise, I wanted to buy one more book to splurge, so I was with my friends who are not readers, and I gave them the option of 3 books that I was interested in picking up, and all 3 of them just happened to be first books in fantasy series that were written by women of color, and they ended up picking, of the 3, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So this is a fantasy where the Emperor decides to shirk his daughter and not allow her to take over the throne after him, so she decides to learn a really forbidden magic to try to overthrow him, and that sounds badass. Honestly, this book and the other 2 that I'm probably going to read together, I have mixed up their synopses so much because they came out at similar times and like gave me similar like female rebellion vibes, but I'm really excited to read this, and I hope that I find a new fantasy series that I'm really excited about that's being released. There has not been one in a while. And then I picked up a couple of books from the thrift store, and one of them is Tillman by Ian McEwan. So I know that this is the movie cover, but I literally got it for free. This is one of my friend's favorite movies, so I wanted to pick it up. All I know is that this is about the relationship between 2 people around the time of World War II, and it's supposed to be really beautiful, and everyone loves the movie, and it just gives me that good historical fiction heartachy vibe. And also at the thrift store, I picked up 1,000 Ships. This book is fairly new, so I'm surprised I found it at a thrift store and so cheap. So this is a retelling of the Odyssey and maybe also the Iliad. The synopsis starts with the fall of Troy, but it is from the female perspectives of that story. As we all know, a lot of roles that are not white, male, and straight have been stripped away from these stories, so finding stuff like this that gives me Madeline Miller type vibes really gets me excited, so hoping to love this as much as I've loved Madeline Miller's books. And the last section is the books that I have been given. So as I said, my birthday was a couple of days ago, so these are the ones that I got from my family. The only one I currently have on me right now is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This book I have been wanting to read since the second that I heard its title, and I have heard nothing but glowing reviews from every single person who has read it, including the couple of people from my book club who are getting to it before I am. So this is about a college reunion of a group of friends who are coming back to their roots, but they really can't seem to put behind the murder of one of their friends while they were in college. I've heard that this is the exact same kind of trippy that I love, and I cannot wait. I'm wondering if there are going to be any horror elements or if it's just going to be a thriller, but either way, I'm very excited, and this is 100% a 5-star prediction. And then in a total surprise, my dad ended up giving me a giant box of Stephen King books. I think there are 8 in here, but he ended up finding a bunch of these at a yard sale, and that was my books. So I have a shit ton of Stephen King books on top of the stack of Stephen King books that I already own and haven't read. And if in a couple days from filming I receive another book for my birthday, here we go. Hello, it's Julie from your past and other Julie's future, and I can show you the Stephen King books and show you the other books that I got from my family. Alright, so let's go through the Stephen King first. First we have Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King. This is a very big one about a disease that is spreading where all these women are going into like comas and being wrapped up in cocoons, and if they're opened, then they go absolutely feral, and there's a woman who is immune to it. Then we've got If It Bleeds, which is his most recent book and also his most recent short story collection. I've read one of his short story collections and it had like that combination of longer stories and shorter stories, but this is 4 longer stories, so that'll be interesting. We've got Revival, which is about a church, and it's like a new wave type church, which is scarier than first it seems. I've never heard of this one before. We've got Roadwork, which is one of the Bachman stories, and this is about a man whose like area is about to be paved over with a giant highway. Not gonna lie, this cover's kind of funny. Then there's End of Watch, which is about a mass murderer who was in a vegetative state, but secretly he's been awake all this time and biding his time, which sounds awesome. Then we've got The Talisman and Black House, which is its sequel, and this is about a young boy who has to find a talisman to try to save his dying mom, which leads him to travel all over across the United States and this other world called the Territories, which I had never heard of this book, but that premise sounds awesome and like something I'd already be interested in, regardless of it being Stephen King and this other guy. And the last one is the one I've heard the most hype for, and that is Lacey's Story. And I knew nothing about this, but I have just heard that it is one of his best. This is about a woman whose husband was a novelist and then he died, and she knows that there was something else going on with him and she's trying to investigate that. Sounds great. Then there's the 2 books that I got from the other members of my family, and shocker, one of them is Stephen King, and that is Misery, which this is one of the ones that I am most excited to read and of course watch the movie. This is about our main character, who is an author who killed off his main character of his long series, and then when he gets in a almost fatal car crash, which Stephen King actually had, he is taken in by one of his biggest fans, who then tortures him into giving her favorite character a new ending. And the last book I got is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I read this last year and it was one of my favorites. It became literary fiction that I have been recommending to everyone, on top of it being just my favorite color. This is about a small town that is slowly falling apart, and the only thing they have left going for them is this junior hockey team that is probably going to make it to the finals this year, and if they don't, they're not going to get the funding that they need to make like a new hockey center. So basically everybody's going to have to move and find new jobs if they don't get this. So everybody's really on edge and already been invested in this hockey team for years and years. The star of the team is then accused of rape, and we see the different members of the town sort of try to figure out what to do in this situation, whether they are, because everyone is invested in this team no matter how starkly opposed they are to this young man's terrible, terrible crime. I love this book, and I really can't wait to read the sequels because I really cared about all of these characters, even if we only saw some of them for a small bit. Frederick Bachman is really good at an ensemble piece, and I found that something that I absolutely love in literary fiction. And that is all of the lots of books that I have acquired over the last little bit. You know, it didn't seem like that many until I went through them all. Particularly because they're all not in one place. I've got some at home, I've got some here, I've got some on my phone and some on my Kindle. Oh boy, my TBR is ever growing. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know which one of these I should read next and any of your thoughts on any of these books. If you would like to find me or my book club anywhere, the links are in the description below. And as always, I will see you in the next one.